Hi, this is Ben Schwellen. Welcome to my channel, and today I'm talking about the Cornish language. Cornish? Cornish is a Celtic language like Irish or Welsh. It's closer to Welsh and Breton, across the water, France. Here's where Cornish is. So, where does it come from? Well, when Rome invaded Britain, there was a British language, and that became slightly Latinized, which then gave birth to Brythonic. And as they left, the Saxons came in and tore everything up and pushed the natives west. And about the year 577, they lost a battle in near present-day Bath. And they were divided from their sister and brothers, the Welsh. And they were pushed further west over time and became, over the next few centuries, a separate language. The reason why it's not spoken as widely as Welsh is mainly because they weren't given a Bible in their own language, which back in the day when people were really religious was very important, because it was the standard language that people used, so they didn't have that, and it was gradually pushed west, and it died as a community language. Did it die? Well, that's up for argument, and I'm not going to get political. Some people say yes, it did die, some people say no, it didn't. What we do know is that it did die as a community language. Revival began. Today, about 400 or 500 people speak Cornish. It's been brought back, and there are people learning it. Here's the brief history of the language, and then we'll get into what it kind of sounds like. After the year 577 and the Cornish get cut off from their other Britons, there's about 3.5 centuries of fighting, in which Saxons and Britons battle back and forth. The language during that time was developing. In the 10th century, Cornwall loses its independence. Within a couple centuries after that, you have the first bits of written Cornish, which have passed down to us in the Prophecy of Merlin, about 1140, written or translated into Latin by John of Cornwall, and in the margins there's a bit of Cornish written. But go forward a couple centuries, 1375, and you have Pascal Naganardaluth, and it's the oldest complete work, which is really important for getting a date of how the language was developing. About 1400, we have the Cornish Ordinalia plays, about 9,000 lines of 3 dramas, which would be played in what's called Plan and Gwari, which is really important. These were outdoor plays, kind of amphitheater. Here's the Plan and Gwari in Porthperrin. These were important for social gathering. This one in Porthperrin could hold about 1,500 to 2,000 people. And here's another one in St. Just. So you could get an idea, this was a community language. At about 1504, we have Benon's Medic coming along. That's 4,568 lines. To put this into perspective, it's more literature than survived from the period in Romanian or Finnish. Very substantial for the time. It's another drama, a play that would perform over a couple days. This is the life of a saint. So you could tell that religion and the community had an interweaving existence. Along with that, you had Benon's Kay, which was the life of Saint Kay, which was only found recently in 2000. So if you can check your cupboards there and see if you have any Cornish manuscripts, we'd greatly appreciate it. After this period, Cornish language does enter into decline because it does have some social factors weighing in on it. So I call this the bitter century, Kanzlede Fuero, from about 1450, 1555 or so, and there's quite a few things that really affect on that. First, you get the English Civil War, which deeply weakens Cornwall. You also have plagues, sweating sickness, wipes out a few more, and in 1497 the Cornish rebel twice, but then again you have plagues coming along, and all the way through 1510 or so. Fact that weakens the Cornish languages, the Protestant Reformation is coming along, and France and Brittany, which is at this time semi-independent, they're Catholic. Protestantism advances. Those ancient ties with the Breton, who speak a very similar language, are cut off across the water, and it weakens the communities which speak Cornish. And just after this, you have the Cornish monasteries are destroyed. Held a lot of the documents where we would find Cornish literature, so we have a deep loss of that at the time. And in 1549, the English language having been imposed upon the Cornish churches, the Cornish rebel, demanding the Bible in their language, and up to a quarter of the Cornish-speaking population is killed. So to cut the century short, basically the Cornish go through an apocalypse. But the Cornish language does press on, even though it is losing ground. In 1555, John Tregear writes quite a substantial bit, 130 pages of Cornish prose, in sermons or homilies in the Catholic faith. And in 1611, we have a play, Creation of the World, with Noah's Flood. And even though this is religious, these are substantial prose that give people insight into how the language was being thought of, how it was being written, how it was being conveyed in a communal sense. But going forward, it becomes more of an antiquarian interest of scholars, and you have the Boson family. Nicholas Boson, between 1708, writes a couple important books. Nebez Gerio Drotho Kernewek and Joan Chian Horth, which is a Cornish folktale fiction in the language, which is really important. And his family members translate parts of the Bible, the Ten Commandments, and write Cornish verse. But as we go into the 18th century, we really find increasingly fragmented language. What is considered officially the last speaker, Dolly Pentraeth, does die. Her last words are in defiance of the English language. And by 1800, we have the communal death of the language, yet people are still passing on knowledge of Cornish. Into the 19th century, people know how to count, people know how to say small things, but it's not a community language, it's not being spoken every day, and it does go out by 1891. However, within 15 years or so, we do have the Cornish language revival. A guy comes along named Henry Jenner, who becomes kind of an expert in the field of Cornish grammar and writes a really important book in 1904, A Handbook of the Cornish Language, and he begins societies devoted to rejuvenating, revitalizing the language. And I'll get a bit into the modern use of the language in a moment, but first, what does Cornish sound like? Well, let's go in and have a look at that. There are a few common grammatical structures between all the Celtic languages, which includes Cornish, which will be unfamiliar to English speakers. And let's start there. One of those are pronominal prepositions, which are linking words that are conjugated, like some languages do verbs. So for instance, we have from, ahanav, from me, ahanas, from you, another, from him, anedi, from her. I was going to go into more of the grammar for you, but I think I'm just going to color outline it so you get a basic grasp of what's doing what, and it's just more important for you to get to hear a bit of the language and see it, so we'll do that instead, alright? So as simple as words, their first letters change according to what's around them, or mainly in front of them. So here's some basic examples. You can see how letters change depending upon who is doing what. It's important because if you're going to learn a language, you need to know who's doing what. One sentence with 3 mutations, Benin, Coswick, Glau. Those 3 words become Envenin as an Angoswick Lau. And here's a woman in the rainforest. Here's some audio.
Splan you and go ahead you. Are to catch a Leah's piss?
Mira catcha Leah's piskin have. Ha mira morthatha pupen sathan.
A bydda for tysgu dres an jith all?
Na fethin.
A bydda ni warbath dres an jith?
Bethin. A bagus nar of it pure vereg.
So what's Cornish like today? Well, we have about 600 fluent speakers and a few thousand now who are conversationally fluent in the language, and there's radio and television available. People are promoting it in films and in music, pop music. The Adventures of Tintin are in Cornish now, which is, hey, who doesn't love Tintin? We have classics which have been translated from J.R.R. Tolkien to Treasure Island, and great works like Alice in Wonderland, and the French novels like Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days. But what can Cornish give you that other languages can't? Well, in a globalized world, it gives you something really localized, a unique identity that doesn't get watered down when you travel around the world in another language. And it's special in that regard. It's unique, and I hope people continue to promote that distinctiveness in the future. What's my interest in Cornish? Well, my actual last name is Angwin, and what it means in Cornish is the white. So hey, thank you. If you liked the video, please subscribe.